The Bell P-39 Airacobra represents one of the most unconventional and controversial fighter aircraft designs of World War II. Emerging from radical engineering concepts that challenge traditional aircraft design philosophy while achieving remarkable success in unexpected theaters of operation, despite its initial reputation as a disappointment among American pilots. Designed by Bell Aircraft Corporation and introduced in 1941, this single-engine fighter featured an unprecedented mid-engine configuration with the Allison V1710 liquid-cooled engine positioned in the central fuselage directly behind the cockpit, creating a distinctive silhouette that set it apart from every contemporary fighter aircraft of its era and establishing design principles that would influence aviation engineering for decades to come. The aircraft's most radical innovation involved mounting the engine behind the pilot, with power transmitted to the nose-mounted propeller through a long extension shaft, a configuration that Bell engineers calculated would concentrate the aircraft's mass near the center of gravity and theoretically improve maneuverability characteristics during combat operations. This arrangement freed the nose section for the installation of heavy armament, specifically the formidable 37mm T9 cannon that became the Airacobra's signature weapon and the centerpiece around which the entire aircraft was essentially designed. The Airacobra was among the first production fighters conceived as a complete weapon system rather than simply an airframe with guns added as an afterthought, representing a philosophical shift in military aviation design that prioritized firepower integration from the earliest conceptual stages of development. The 37mm cannon, designed in 1934 by the American Armament Corporation, could fire projectiles weighing approximately 1.3 pounds capable of penetrating 20 millimeters of armor plating at 500 yards distance, making it theoretically devastating against both enemy aircraft and ground targets. The weapon measured 90 inches in length and weighed 200 pounds, requiring rigid mounting and alignment parallel to the aircraft's centerline for accurate fire. Traditional nose-mounted engine configurations would have made installing such a large weapon physically impossible, as it needed to fire through the propeller hub. Thus, the mid-engine layout became not merely an option, but an absolute necessity for Bell's design philosophy that prioritized this heavy cannon above all other considerations. Additionally, the P-39 became the first American single-engine fighter equipped with tricycle landing gear, another revolutionary feature that improved ground handling characteristics, reduced the risk of nose-over accidents during landing, and provided pilots with better forward visibility while taxiing compared to the conventional tail-dragger configuration that dominated fighter design throughout the 1930s and early war years. This tricycle arrangement would eventually become standard for virtually all post-war jet fighters, demonstrating how the Airacobra pioneered design features that outlasted its own operational service life. The aircraft's developmental history began with the ambitious specifications outlined in Circular Proposal X-609, issued in 1937 by Captain Claire Chennault's successor at the Air Corps Tactical School and Lieutenant Benjamin Kelsey, who envisioned a high-altitude interceptor capable of defending against enemy bomber formations at altitudes where existing fighters struggled to operate effectively. The prototype XP-39 conducted its maiden flight on April 6, 1938, in Ohio, demonstrating impressive performance by reaching speeds approaching 390 miles per hour at 20,000 feet altitude within just minutes of takeoff, suggesting the design held considerable promise for fulfilling the Army Air Corps' requirements for a modern interceptor. The original XP-39 prototype incorporated a General Electric turbo supercharger intended to maintain engine performance at high altitudes, where atmospheric pressure drops significantly, with the turbocharger installation positioned on the fuselage's left side with its own cooling intake scoop. However, through a series of controversial decisions during the aircraft's development and testing phases, the turbo supercharger system was eliminated from production models, reportedly due to concerns about weight, mechanical complexity, and cooling difficulties, though some historians suggest institutional priorities and resource allocation to other programs like the P-38 Lightning played determining roles in this fateful decision. Available turbo superchargers were reportedly diverted to P P-38 production, leaving the P-39 without the high-altitude performance enhancement its designers had originally envisioned. This removal of the turbo supercharger proved catastrophic for the aircraft's operational effectiveness in European combat conditions, as the single-stage, single-speed supercharger that remained in production, P-39s provided inadequate performance above approximately 15,000 to 17,000 feet altitude. The aircraft achieved its maximum speed of approximately 368 miles per hour at around 13,800 feet, with performance degrading rapidly at higher altitudes and the operational ceiling reaching only the mid-20,000s range. Utterly inadequate for intercepting German bombers operating at 30,000 feet or engaging Luftwaffe fighters that could climb above the Aerocabra's effective operating envelope and attack from superior altitude with impunity. When the United States entered World War II following the Pearl Harbor attack, nearly 600 P-39s had already been manufactured, representing a substantial investment in an aircraft whose fundamental performance limitations were becoming increasingly apparent to operational squadrons. The British Royal Air Force had ordered hundreds of Airacabras before American entry into the war, anticipating an advanced fighter that could compete with German aircraft over European skies. However, when the first Airacabras reached No. 601 Squadron RAF in September 1941, pilots discovered the top speed was 30 miles per hour less than Bell had claimed, and the aircraft that supposedly could operate above 36,000 feet actually proved inferior to Spitfires, Hurricanes, Messerschmitt Bf 109s, and even the new Hawker Typhoon above 15,000 feet altitude. The British experience with the Airacabra proved disastrous and brief, with mechanical unreliability compounding the performance deficiencies and creating serious serviceability problems that left squadrons unable to maintain operational readiness. No. 601 Squadron became the only British unit fully equipped with the type, flying just 4 operational missions with P-39s before converting to Spitfires in March 1942, effectively ending Royal Air Force interest in the aircraft after barely 6 months of operational experience. The British government refused delivery of remaining aircraft on order, and these rejected Airacabras were redirected to American forces with the designation P-400, many eventually shipping to the Southwest Pacific Theater, where desperate circumstances made any fighter aircraft valuable regardless of its performance limitations. Despite its rejection by British and American pilots in European combat conditions, the P-39 Airacabra achieved remarkable and completely unexpected success in Soviet service, becoming one of the most successful American combat aircraft when operated by Soviet pilots on the Eastern Front. More than 4,773 P-39s, predominantly the N and Q variants, were delivered to the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program, with the Soviet Air Force ultimately using it to score more aerial victories than any other American fighter type flown by any Air Force in any conflict. A staggering achievement that completely contradicted the aircraft's poor reputation among Western pilots and demonstrated how operational conditions and tactical doctrine dramatically affected aircraft effectiveness. Soviet success with the Airacabra stemmed largely from the fact that aerial combat on the Eastern Front typically occur at altitudes around 15,000 feet or lower, well within the P-39's optimal performance envelope. Unlike the high-altitude bomber escort missions and interceptor operations that characterized Western European combat, where American and British fighters routinely operated above 30,000 feet. Soviet tactical aviation focused primarily on ground attack missions, close air support, and low-altitude fighter sweeps supporting ground offensives, missions for which the P-39's heavy armament, good low-altitude performance, and sturdy construction proved ideally suited despite characteristics that made it unsuitable for high-altitude combat.